Good afternoon, YouTuber subscribers and friends and alike. It's Grant coming at you from the shopping mall in Dade. Shopping mall in South Miami, Dade, Florida. I have news, I guess, not good news. But I did a Skype interview with the woman that's in charge of HR for the golf course and then the other woman that's in charge of the front desk and at Ocean Reef. And they require a $500 deposit on the dorm room to keep you from destroying it or something, and then they charge you $1 to $3.50 a meal for every meal that you have. Um, the first 2 weeks until you get paid, and then it's that amount that they keep track of, or that they pay on the next paycheck, or whatever. You know what I mean? It comes out of your paycheck after that. But for the first 2 weeks that you're there, you have to come up with your own food, room and board, pretty much, because you're paying $500 for the first 2 weeks to the month worth of a deposit that you may or may not get back because you're in there with at least one other roommate, if not two roommates. And you, even if you pay that your portion of the deposit, you wouldn't get it back until the end of the season, when they can check everybody out and they can check the room out and see. And so if you left, let's say, a month or two into it, and those roommates stayed but they partied or tore the place all to hell or whatever, none of you would get your deposit back, even though it wasn't your fault necessarily. And things just got fishier and fishier after that. The meal thing with the paying $1 to $3.50 a meal, it's so that the company can say it charges you for the meals or something, and they get a kickback for it. And I'm sure we don't get the kickback out of that deal. It's just the company does. And more stuff. Even if you had an RV, they charge you for the plot to live on. And that's the other thing, is if you have an RV, they don't allow it on the actual premises, but you can park in, like, I forget, like 10 miles out in Key Largo and come in by bike or something, or by public transportation every day if you had an RV. I don't, but I'm just looking into it for that point. More and more things added up, and the company sounded fishier and fishier, and I don't want to deal with that. I'd rather go work at a national forest or a ski. I'm not a big fan of snow or anything, but there's ski resorts and stuff like that you just show up and work the same day, and room and board is included. It might be taken out of your check, but it's taken out of your next check out. Out west, they do things differently than in Florida, I guess, and that's not a bad idea for Ocean Reef. I'm not talking bad about them at all, or nothing, but you pretty much have to come down here with a good $1,000 probably, between the $500 rent and some gas money to get around, and to pay your food there for the first couple weeks, and to pay your regular bills until you got paid for 2 weeks. I would guess around $1,000. To me, I don't know, they must have had some really bad born people or something that came through there and destroyed the dorm or something for them to charge that hefty of a deposit. But anyway, that pretty much closed that job up. I checked into cruise lines, 3 different cruise lines, if I got paid for my own passport, and I paid for a seaman's license or something like that. And then they did the background check and everything. So after you pay all that, they won't even touch you to do the background check to pay for it, doing the drug test and background check, until after you've already paid for it. You already show them you have your passport and your seaman's license. Then they will pay for the drug test and the background check. And then they may or may not hire you on after all that, depending on what they want to do. If they have the staffing availability or what kind of jobs you applied for versus what they have available or whatever. And to me, that's a lot of money up front on your end for possibly nothing again. So, but there's a Alaska cruise line that doesn't operate like that, but they don't operate until May through August or September of next year, or not next year, but the summer season, because they go north. They look like a nice company to possibly work for out west next summer, but next summer I wanted to be out expediting. Basically, I'm down to waiting through December, January, and part of February to get some of the $4,000 that I paid into the U.S. government in taxes, because I paid $200 a month for 10 months, or no, $200 a paycheck, so $400 a month for 10 months. That comes out to $4,000 worth of taxes that I paid in. So history behind this has proven that most of the time, and that depends on your exemptions and what all happens and everything. The years that I didn't have my dad's house and everything else, I paid in, let's say whatever I paid in. It's like this year I paid in $4,000. I would get back about $1,500 to $2,000. So I'm hoping that I get that amount and I can find a fleet owner. Probably take a bus or a train or something from across west over back to wherever fleet owner. I've got a couple of them in mind. The one I'd like to work for requires a Class C CDL, which I'd have to get out of Ohio for his insurance, but he said I can use his house as my mailing address and then go and get it and everything, and he'd let me use the equipment to do that, the van and stuff to go test out and do that, and I've done this Class C CDL in South Dakota, so that would be a little bit of money up front. That's roughly $85 for the physical, and he said $200 for the Class C CDL after you get done with the written and the driving course and everything. But with his company, you can start out for 3 months without a CDL, running loads that don't require the weight limit, and then you have to get it for his commercial insurance to be cheaper. And I had the only reason he's allowing me, normally he would take any drivers on who don't have a CDL, but he already personally saw my CDL Class C a couple of years ago. It's the same guy I went to back then when I didn't have money, but he said if I show up with like a 500 to 1,000 would be better, and a phone that works, he would take me on without having my CDL right off the bat, because he knows I can get it. I can get it. I've proven I can get it. The South Dakota CDL Class C, and go that route, or go into there's I guess a couple people on Craigslist. I guess you can get a whole Class A CDL out of if you paid them $500 and use their tractor trailer rig to go do it, or pickup and trailer. That's things I'm thinking about in February or end of February, but the problem is it's the end of November. It's the 29th of November right now, so a couple days till December. So I have all of December, January, and probably most of February to get through. And so far the only thing I can think of for that is to slowly work my way out west and try to go to that Camper Fest and that RTR. And I'm going to look into going to work at a ski lodge. I'm not a big fan of working in the snow, but I can manage to do it for a month or 2 or 3 or whatever. And see if they'll let me on, and I'm doing an interview with them by phone tomorrow, but I've been contacting them through email, and it's a ski lodge in Lake Tahoe, California, right next to the Lake Tahoe, Nevada, Arizona border-ish, somewhere in there. It's pretty close to Quartzites, which is what I kind of liked about the deal. Because even if that don't work out, it'd be close to where I'd want to kind of be at, if not in Florida. So that's the latest update, and basically they shut my phone off yesterday, and I'm a month and something late in paying it, so I won't be able to get that back on unless I caught up those payments. But with Verizon, back in the day, Verizon's plan before everybody went to data, when they had all the unlimited data back in the day when I worked at the ranch and stuff like that, it was a pretty good plan, and it was pretty cheap. It was maybe $100 for the 2 or 3 phones that we had and fleet insurance and everything. Nowadays, you can very easily get just a single month up to $300 on the way they run their data plans. Always something or another comes up between my 2 phones, my tablet, and that data plan, and I told them I'm gonna shut it off, and they came back at me that I still own the phone. The one phone they're each like $650, but the one phone I don't have paid off yet. So into that whole deal, I'll have a collections bill from Verizon for around $2,000 because that costly mistake, and the other costly mistake that worked out technically is the car. The car is gonna end up having to get auctioned off sometime within this next month. I'm guessing I'm gonna have to repossess it, or let them repossess it and auction it off. And they can start a bid at $6,000, and then if people bid clear up to $10,000 or whatever, then it would pay it off. But if they don't, if they bid for like $6,500 and they're the only ones who bid it and they win it, then I'm stuck paying the other half of what I got into it. Into that whole deal, it's gonna be just like if I had taken those months working at Walmart and paid rent alongside living in a car. That's how much money I'm going to end up spending on from this car, from the use of this car. But at the same time, it allowed me to both use it as a house and my car. So in the end, it'll kind of wash itself out. But it was a bad mistake on my part. I mean, it was plan A when I was going to look into being in a relationship up there and working there, providing for family or whatever you want to do on plan A. It would have worked out great to allow me to spend a little extra that way to do it. But plan B would have been to go right into expediting, which means park the car and leave it stored someplace and pay $400 a month to store it. That doesn't make no sense. So I'd much rather pay on the payoff collections of both the Verizon bill and this one at like $50 a piece each or something, instead of having to pay some outrageous amounts every month, like $300 or $400 or whatever on each, and I'd never make any money. And yeah, I know over the length of time, interest is gonna go through the roof on that deal, and I'll end up paying probably $400 or $500 more in interest in the amount of time I stretch it out. But it is what it is, unless I win the lottery or something. I mean, at the end of the day, though, I try not to let debt get to me, because I only have this car for around 12 grand, my Verizon wireless phone bill for around 2 grand, and about 2 grand in credit cards, so about 18, give or take 16 or 18,000 in debt, which isn't that bad compared to other people. I mean, it'd take me a year. If I was really saving, it'd take like a year to pay off or something to get back out of it. But in this system, it seems like you're always going to have debt, or at least be living paycheck to paycheck, in which case one little thing could screw up, like they don't like you anymore at your job and they can fire you, blah blah blah, and it could screw the whole chain of events up. If you have a house and everything, I skipped the part of having a house and an apartment because I didn't have the apartment. I could just leave that day. But that was pretty much the first step. Would you get kicked, you'd have to choose between your apartment or your house or something that you're paying on, that you can't pay anymore because you don't have work within a month or something of not finding work, and etc. And that was September 1st. So September, October, now November. We're going to be working into December, so 4 months. Not working spot jobs, but not working a steady enough job to be able to pay it. I've been paying car insurance and part of my phone bill, excuse me, and food and gas, but that's all I've been able to on the road. And I took a deferment on the car, so I didn't have to pay it for the 3 months. So I'm only technically late a month, but even still, with the 3-month deferment and that, it's been 4 months, over 90 days or something. So they're threatening to repossess it, but at the same time, they would much rather have me pay it off, because they know that they're not going to get the full amount of the car at auction, and then they're still stuck with having me pay the rest of that off, and that becomes a collection debt from that point. That could, they run the risk of getting that wrote off or whatever down the line, so they don't like that idea. They'd rather have me paying the collateral on cars, still have the car, so they can pay their really high interest rates and etc. on it, I guess. I don't know, I was paying like 16% interest now that I looked at it. I kind of really screwed myself over on getting this car, but at the same time, it was my first ever being able to lease or finance a car and drive something dependable around, instead of those $500 beat around cars that you're always putting $200 or $300 a month into just to keep it going, to fix this or that, just so you can take it out of town, let alone anything else. This thing, knock on wood, I don't have any wood to knock on at the moment, has got me all the way around the country pretty dependably. Besides an oil change, that's the only thing it needs right now. That's the latest of the updates. I'm going to wait till this video uploads, and then I'm going to head north, as far north as I can get today. Just north to somewhere in North Florida, like if I'm really, really lucky. Maybe Tallahassee or something by the time next 2 or 3 days goes by. One thing about it, I've been able to tour Florida, pretty much all over Florida. I can pretty much say I've been on, not every road, but I've been on all major roads on Florida by the end of my tour. And then I'm going to stay on the southern tip of the southern states, on the Gulf of Mexico, and go toward Texas. Find somewhere in probably southern Texas or New Mexico, or like I say, Arizona. If I can afford to get all the way out to Arizona to work at that ski resort, although I'm not a big fan of doing that because my lungs don't like the cold weather. But if they gave me housing and stuff like that, I could figure out how to get around it. Work at a front desk. The one thing about it, with my 6 or 8 years working at front desk, I could technically go and apply at any hotel anywhere, and they'd be like, yeah, sure. The problem becomes the car, where I need to find housing so that I'm not screwed if and when they do come around to take the car. And I gotta be making an arrangement or agreement with them as to where to surrender it. They would prefer that I'm over there on their side of the states, because I guess they got offices. Well, they got offices all over the country, but they got offices that deal with this car in Texas, Colorado, Utah, and Montana, I think. So they would prefer that I get within that range and then surrender the car or something, from what they said. But that's the latest in my updates. Don't get me wrong, I like living in the car, living the van life type of thing, but unless you have a stable job out here, you can get by on day labor and doing things like I've been doing. I'm winging it because I know I can wing it. But, man, this gets old after a while. And I would prefer to go to some place that has housing just so I can live somewhat of a normal life again. A temporary normal life. I don't want to get into a permanent, my own apartment, permanent year-round job. That's just not my thing anymore. But I wouldn't mind setting it up so I have some place that you go 2 or 3, 4 months out of the year, then you have like a month vacation. Or a month to get to the next job, and then you work 2 or 3, 4 months the second half of the year, and so on. I wouldn't mind doing that like a work camper. Or going at expediting. Expediting is what I prefer, because I could still travel around like this, but then I'd be getting paid to do it, and my life wouldn't be as boring. I don't know, maybe boredom or something that's starting to make it feel not the greatest. The one thing I will say about Florida, though, besides it being muggy, is on the days that it don't rain, which it don't rain very often, like once every 2 weeks or something, maybe you might get a little bit of rain. On the days that don't rain and it's not that muggy, man, it is beautiful temperature down here. I mean, I slept last night literally in just shorts. I didn't have a shirt on or nothing. I went back there and slept in my shorts with no blankets or nothing. It was freaking awesome. And I love that compared to trying to sleep in a sleeping bag and having 20 degrees colder in the car. Nice and toasty in the sleeping bag, and I get out like, ugh, hate that feeling. And my home is on wheels, so I chose to move it. May or may not have been the best idea, but I winged it, or kind of winged it, and came down here thinking maybe I can get a job down here, maybe not, and I knew the whole maybe not might happen. But what do? You sit at home and think about all the what ifs, or do you just get out there and do it? And my being able to wing it, or not wing it, but I know of resources that I could go to and stuff that I could do to get around and do all jobs and stuff like that. So I know I could get myself taken care of. I'll be on the road, but it's not all lollipops and roses out here. Like and subscribe, leave comments, and we'll catch you in the flip. Peace.